My mom worked the night shift, so when I heard her calling my name from downstairs, I knew something was terribly wrong because at that exact moment, she was still talking to me on the phone. If you've ever been home alone, you know how every little sound feels louder after midnight. The house settles, the pipes creak, the refrigerator hums. You tell yourself it's normal until one sound doesn't belong. This story was sent to me by one of our subscribers. I've changed the names to protect their privacy, but after reading it, I honestly didn't know whether it was a terrifying coincidence or something far worse. This is Tales of the Dark. My name is Ethan. I was 17 when this happened. It was late October. My father had died in a car accident 6 years earlier. Since then, it had only been my mom and me. She worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. Night shifts were common. Sometimes she'd leave before sunset and come home after sunrise. I hated those nights, not because I was afraid of being alone. I actually enjoyed the quiet. I'd order food, watch movies, play video games until midnight. It felt like having the entire house to myself, at least. That's what I thought. Our house sat at the end of a quiet suburban street, nothing unusual about it. 2 floors, old wooden staircase, small attic, a fenced backyard. The neighbors had lived there for years. Everyone knew everyone, nothing bad ever happened. That Friday started like every other night. Around 6:30 p.m., Mom finished getting ready for work. Before leaving, she reminded me to lock every door. "I'll call you during my break, I know, and don't stay up until 3 in the morning." I smiled. "No promises," she laughed. Kissed my forehead, then walked outside. I watched her car disappear down the street. The house became silent. I locked the front door, checked the back door, closed every window, exactly like she always wanted. The first few hours were completely normal. I ordered pizza, finished some homework. Watched random videos online, nothing strange. Around 9:45 p.m., rain started falling, not heavy, just enough to tap softly against the windows. By 10, the neighborhood looked completely empty. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. No cars, no people, only rain. At exactly 10:18 p.m., my phone rang. "Mom, hey, everything okay?" "Yeah, just checking on you. You remembered to lock everything?" "I did. You sound tired. It has already been a busy shift." I could hear hospital announcements in the background, people talking, monitors beeping. She was definitely at work. We talked for another 5 minutes, mostly about school, nothing important. Then she said, "I've got to go. I'll call you again before I leave work. Love you too." The call ended. I plugged my phone into the charger. Walked into the kitchen for another drink. That's when I heard it. "Ethan." My body froze. My mom's voice, soft, calm, coming from downstairs, specifically in the living room. I stopped breathing. There was no panic at first, just confusion. Maybe she forgot something. Maybe she'd come back without me hearing the car. I walked toward the living room. "Mom." No answer. The lights were off. The room was empty. I checked the front door, still locked. Deadbolt engaged. I opened it. Rain, empty driveway. Her car wasn't there. I looked down at my phone. No missed calls, no messages. I stood there for almost a minute trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then the voice came again. "Ethan," this time from the kitchen behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped. Nobody. Every light was exactly where I'd left it. Every chair, every cabinet, nothing had changed. I grabbed my phone and called Mom. She answered almost immediately. "Everything all right?" I didn't know what to say. "So, did you come home?" There was a short pause. "What, did you forget something?" "Ethan, I'm still at the hospital." Behind her, I heard the same emergency room announcements, the same background noise. She wasn't lying. "I'm serious. I just heard you." Another pause, then she laughed nervously. "You've been watching horror movies again." "I'm not joking." Her voice became softer. "Check the doors." I already did. "Check them again." I walked to the front door, locked, back door locked, garage entrance locked, every window locked. "There, everything's locked." She stayed silent, then quietly said, "Keep them that way." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but don't open the door for anyone tonight." Her tone had changed. She sounded uneasy. "Mom, has something happened?" No, I just have a bad feeling. Before I could ask anything else, someone called her name. I have to go. I'll see you in the morning. The line disconnected. I stood alone in the hallway. The silence felt heavier now, almost as if the house itself were listening. I tried distracting myself. Movie didn't help. Music, turned it off after 2 songs. Video games, couldn't focus. Every few minutes, I'd stop listening, waiting for another voice. Nothing. Around 11. I finally relaxed. Maybe I really had imagined it. Then, the kitchen light turned on by itself. I stared toward the doorway. I knew I'd turned it off. Slowly, I walked inside. Nobody. I checked every cabinet, behind the pantry door, even under the table. Nothing. As I turned to leave, something caught my attention. Our family photo. The one sitting beside the microwave. It had been turned around, face down. I picked it up. The glass felt cold, much colder than it should have. I looked at the picture. It was normal. Just Mom and me at the beach a few summers earlier. I set it back, facing forward. Then noticed the refrigerator door wasn't fully closed, just slightly open, enough for the light inside to spill onto the floor. I was certain I'd closed it. Maybe I hadn't. I shut it firmly, went back upstairs, locked my bedroom door, and told myself, tomorrow morning, I'd laugh about all of this. At exactly 10:31 p.m. the next night, my mom called again, only this time. She wasn't the first one to say my name. Before I could answer the phone, I heard it. Ethan. My mother's voice, soft, gentle, coming from downstairs. Again, I looked at my phone. It was still ringing. Mom. My hands were shaking as I answered. Mom. Before she could speak, I whispered, "You're calling me again." She immediately knew something was wrong. You heard it. It wasn't a question. She already knew. My heart stopped. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. Ethan. I need you to listen very carefully. Do not go downstairs. I slowly backed away from my bedroom door. Mom, how do you know? She stayed silent for a few seconds, then quietly said, "Because it happened to your father." I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My dad. She had never talked about the night he died, not once. He told me he kept hearing my voice in the house while I was working. I thought he was exhausted. I thought he imagined it. Her voice cracked. 3 days later, he disappeared for almost 6 hours. When he came back, he refused to tell me where he'd been. He only said one thing: if you ever hear your own family calling from another room, don't answer. A loud knock interrupted her. Not downstairs, my bedroom door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. Mom heard them through the phone. Ethan, is that your door? I couldn't speak. The knocking came again, exactly 3 times. Then, my mother's voice. Ethan, open the door. I slowly looked at my phone. Mom was still on the line. Ethan, I'm right here. Don't open it. I backed into the corner of my room. The voice outside laughed. It sounded exactly like my mother. Then it spoke again. I know you're talking to her. She can't help you. Every hair on my body stood up. The voice knew. It knew I was on the phone. The doorknob slowly turned, once, twice. Then stopped. Silence. A full minute passed. Nothing. Then footsteps walking away down the hallway toward the stairs. I stayed awake until sunrise when Mom finally came home. She found me sitting on the floor with a baseball bat in my hands. She hugged me tighter than she ever had before. Then she looked at the bedroom door. 3 long scratch marks ran down the wood, as if someone had dragged sharp metal across it. She didn't say a word. Instead, she walked into the attic. I followed her. She climbed through the small hatch. The attic was filled with dust. Old boxes, Christmas decorations, broken furniture. Then she stopped. There, in the insulation, was a narrow crawl space, barely large enough for someone to fit through. Mom stared at it. I've never seen this before. We called the police. 2 officers searched the house. At first, they found nothing. Then one officer shouted, "Over here!" Hidden deep inside the crawl space, they found blankets, empty water bottles, canned food, a flashlight, dozens of food wrappers. Someone had been living above our ceiling for weeks, maybe months. The officers continued searching. One of them pulled out an old cardboard box. Inside were cassette tapes, nearly 50 of them. Each tape had a handwritten label, different names, different years. One tape simply read Linda. My mother's name, another. ETHAN, the police took everything for evidence that afternoon. A detective asked us to come to the station. He played one of the tapes. A man's voice filled the room. Michael. It sounded exactly like the speaker's wife. The detective stopped the recording. The man who owned this tape disappeared 12 years ago. He inserted another. Emily, this time, a little girl's voice. The detective sighed. We've connected 9 missing person cases to recordings like these. No fingerprints, no DNA. No suspect, just voices. I asked him, how can someone copy a person's voice so perfectly? He looked at me. We don't know, but whoever did this spent a long time watching their victims. For the next week, police searched the neighborhood. They interviewed every neighbor. One elderly man remembered seeing someone walking along the rooftops late at night. Everyone assumed he was confused, until another neighbor reported hearing footsteps above her ceiling months earlier. The investigation made local news. No arrests, no leads. Life slowly returned to normal. Mom sold the house. Neither of us ever wanted to spend another night there. We moved nearly 300 miles away. Different town, different jobs, different life. For almost a year, nothing happened. No strange voices, no knocks, no missing objects. I finally convinced myself it was over. Then, one rainy evening, Mom called me while I was studying at college. Ethan, I found something while unpacking. What? One of the moving boxes. It isn't ours. I frowned. What do you mean? It was in the garage. I opened it today. There are old cassette tapes inside. My heart began racing. The police took all of them. I know, these are different. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. One of them has your name on it. I drove home that night. The box sat on the kitchen table. Inside, 5 cassette tapes, no fingerprints, no return address, only names: Linda, Ethan, Michael, Emily, and one tape neither of us recognized. It simply said, next. There was no note, no explanation, just the tapes. Mom looked at me. We should destroy them. I nodded. We carried the box into the backyard, poured lighter fluid over everything, then set it on fire. The tapes melted. The labels curled into ash. We watched until nothing remained. Neither of us spoke that night. For the first time in almost a year, I slept peacefully. At exactly 2:41 a.m., my phone rang. Mom, half asleep. I answered. Hello, silence. Then, my mother's voice, soft, gentle. Ethan. I smiled. You couldn't sleep either. No answer. Then the voice quietly said, I'm downstairs. My heart stopped because I wasn't home. I was alone in my college apartment. 300 miles away. I slowly walked to my bedroom door. The apartment was completely silent. Then, from the other side of my bedroom door, I heard my mother's voice, exactly the same voice from the phone. Ethan, open the door. That was the end of this story. If you've ever experienced something you still can't explain, or have a strange story of your own, send it to Tales of the Dark. Your story could become the next nightmare featured on this channel. And if you're new here, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, because here, every story leaves you questioning what might be waiting in the dark. Until next time, sleep well if you can.